I was standing in my own kitchen holding a positive pregnancy test that wasn't mine when my husband walked through the door and smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Let me say that again, because I need you to sit with it the way I had to sit with it. A pregnancy test, not mine, sitting in a Ziploc bag on my kitchen island next to a manila folder with his mistress's name typed across the tab in size 14 font. Bold, like she wanted me to see it. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just looked at him and asked one question. Do you know what today's date is? He didn't understand why I was asking. He thought I was talking about our anniversary. He had no idea I was talking about the day his entire life was about to fall apart, piece by piece, in an order I had already decided 3 weeks earlier. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. The moment you find out isn't the moment your story starts. My story had already started. I had already found the messages. I had already hired the lawyer. I had already moved the money. He just didn't know it yet. By the end of this video, you are going to watch a man lose his marriage, his money, his reputation, and the respect of everyone who ever mattered to him. And he's going to do it to himself in slow motion while thinking he's the one in control. Stay with me, because what happened in the next 6 weeks was the most satisfying thing I have ever lived through. Hey, welcome back. If this is your first time here, I tell true betrayal stories, the kind where the woman doesn't just survive, she comes out the other side holding all the cards. This is one of those stories. It's mine. If you've ever been lied to by someone who swore they'd never do it, you're going to feel every second of this one in your chest. Before we get into it, subscribe now because this story gets so much worse before it gets better. There's a part around the halfway mark that made my own lawyer put his coffee down and say, "Wait, she did what?" You don't want to miss that. Okay, let's go back to the beginning because you need to understand who I was before all this, the version of me that still believed in him. My name doesn't matter for this story, so I'll just tell you what mattered. I was 34 years old, I ran a small accounting practice out of a rented office 2 towns over, and I had been married to Ryan for 6 years. 6 years. Long enough to build a life. Long enough to stop questioning things you probably should have questioned from the start. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party. He made fun of the way I organized my purse by category. Wallet here, keys here, hand sanitizer here. And I made fun of the fact that he'd worn a blazer to a backyard barbecue. It was easy. It was fun. He remembered things I said in passing and brought them up weeks later, which felt romantic at the time. Looking back now, I think he was just good at collecting information, filing it away, using it later. I don't say that to sound bitter. I say it because it's true, and the story only makes sense if I'm honest about the whole picture, not just the ending. The first 2 years were genuinely good. He proposed on a hiking trail we'd done a dozen times before, at the exact spot where we'd had our first real conversation about wanting kids someday. I cried. My mother cried. Even my dad, who does not cry, got suspiciously quiet and had to check something on his phone. We got married in October. Small wedding, 60 people, string lights, my grandmother's cake recipe. I remember standing at the altar thinking, I got the good one. I actually got the good one. For a long time, I believed that. Ryan worked in sales for a regional logistics company, the kind of job with a lot of travel, a lot of client dinners, a lot of, sorry babe, running late, big account, you know how it is. And I did know how it was because I trusted him. Trust isn't naive. Trust is what you give someone until they prove they don't deserve it. He was funny. He was affectionate in front of people, which I liked. He'd hold my hand at dinner parties, brag about my business to his coworkers, tell people I was the smart one in the relationship. I used to think that was sweet. Now I think it was performance, a very good one. Here's where I want you to start paying attention, because these are the moments I only understood in hindsight, the red flags, the ones that felt like nothing at the time. Red flag number 1. About 3 years in, Ryan started keeping his phone face down, always. On the counter, on the nightstand, on the table at restaurants. I asked him about it once, half joking, and he said, "You know how many spam texts I get? I just don't want the screen lighting up during dinner." Reasonable. Believable. I let it go. Red flag number 2. He started going to the gym at odd hours. Sometimes 11 at night, sometimes 6 in the morning before work. He got noticeably more into his appearance. New clothes, a haircut every 2 weeks instead of every 6. I remember thinking, good for him, he's taking care of himself. I never once thought, who is he taking care of himself for? Red flag number 3, and this one still makes me sick. About 18 months before everything blew up, his company hired a new account coordinator. Her name was Danielle. He mentioned her maybe twice. The new girl on the Peterson account is sharp. She caught a billing error nobody else saw. That was it. That was the whole introduction. Nothing alarming, nothing that would make any reasonable wife suspicious. I want to be really clear about something, because I know some of you are already yelling at your screen. I was not a fool. I was not checking his phone every night. I was not interrogating him about coworkers, because a healthy relationship doesn't require surveillance. That's the whole point of trust. He knew that about me, and I think, looking back, he used it. Around year 5, small things started shifting. He picked up more work trips. He started working out even more. He got a new cologne. I remember because I bought him cologne for his birthday that year, and he barely wore it. But I'd catch a whiff of something unfamiliar on his collar sometimes and just assume it was from the gym or a client's office or literally anything other than the truth. We started arguing more, but about nothing things. Whose turn it was to do the dishes, why he was on his phone during movie night, why he seemed distracted when I talked about my day. I chalked it up to normal marriage stuff, the season where the honeymoon phase fully wears off and you're just two tired adults trying to run a household. I didn't know I was living next to a stranger. There's one moment from about 4 months before everything came out that I think about constantly now. We were at his cousin's baby shower. Danielle's name came up again. Apparently, she'd been promoted, was now working directly under Ryan on a major client account, traveling with him to a conference in Charlotte. I remember someone at the table joking, "Careful, Ryan, don't come home with a souvenir." And everyone laughed, including him. He laughed the loudest. I laughed too. I had no idea I was laughing at the setup to my own worst nightmare. But what happened next, I never saw coming. It started with a receipt. Not a text message. Not lipstick on a collar. Not some dramatic movie moment. A receipt from a hotel gift shop folded into a tiny square stuck in the bottom of a jacket pocket I was emptying before dry cleaning. A bottle of water, a pack of gum, and a room service charge. From a business trip he told me was 3 nights, but this receipt was dated for a 4th night he never mentioned. I stood in my laundry room holding a piece of paper the size of a fortune cookie slip, and something in my stomach just dropped. Not because one receipt proves anything, but because I suddenly, instantly knew. The way you know a storm is coming before the sky even changes color. Some animal part of my brain had clocked it long before my conscious mind was willing to. I didn't confront him. I want you to understand why, because I think this is the single most important decision I made in this entire story. If I had confronted him with a hotel receipt, he would have had an explanation ready in about 4 seconds. "Oh, the trip got extended. I forgot to mention it. Work paid for an extra night. I was going to tell you." And I would have had nothing to counter it with, just a feeling, just a receipt. He would have walked away clean, and I would have spent the next year being told I was paranoid. So instead, I got quiet. I got careful, and I started paying attention the way I should have been paying attention all along. Over the next 3 weeks, I didn't ask a single question. I just watched. I noticed he'd started deleting his call log every night before bed, something I only caught because I picked up his phone once to check the time and saw it happening in real time, him thumbing through and clearing entries while pretending to check email. I noticed a new gym bag that never actually smelled like a gym. I noticed he'd started taking client calls from the car in the driveway instead of inside the house. And then I found the second phone. It was in the spare tire well of his truck, in a magnetic hide-a-key box, zip-tied to the frame. I only found it because I was looking for a tire gauge and got curious about a box that clearly wasn't a tire gauge. When I opened it, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped it twice before I could get the screen to unlock. And it wasn't even locked. He hadn't even bothered. 11 months of messages. 11 months. Her name was Danielle. Of course it was Danielle. I'm not going to read you every message because honestly, some of it doesn't deserve to be repeated out loud. But I'll tell you the ones that broke something in me permanently. There was a message from 4 months in where he told her, "She's never going to find out. She trusts me too much. It's actually kind of funny." Funny. There was a message from 7 months in, after an argument Ryan and I had at home about something small. I think it was about visiting his mother for the holidays, where he told Danielle, "I married the wrong person. I know that now." He said that to another woman, about me, in our own house practically, while I was probably in the next room folding laundry, thinking we were just having a normal disagreement. And then the message that ended everything, sent 9 days before I found the phone, a photo of a positive pregnancy test, and underneath it, his response. 3 words, "We'll figure it out." I sat on the floor of my own garage for an hour. I didn't cry, not right away. I think I was too far past shock and into something colder. I remember staring at that message, "We'll figure it out," and thinking, he's not even scared. He's not even panicking. He already has a plan for his fake life with her, and I'm just the inconvenience standing between him and it. I can't believe this, I remembered thinking over and over. I can't believe this is my life. I can't believe I spent 6 years building something with someone who was already planning how to dissolve it while lying in bed next to me. Here's the part that made me want to scream. I went back through my own memory with new eyes. That baby shower joke, "Don't come home with a souvenir," he'd laughed because it was already happening. The Charlotte conference, the extra hotel night. He didn't just cheat. He'd built an entire second relationship in parallel while I was planning our 7th anniversary trip. I had spreadsheets for flight deals to Portugal. He had a burner phone with a pregnant girlfriend. I want to pause here and say something directly to anyone watching this who has lived through something similar. The confusion is almost worse than the pain. The why eats at you in a way that nothing else does. Why wasn't I enough? Why did he lie for 11 months instead of just leaving? Why did he let me keep loving him? I'm telling you what I eventually figured out, and it took me a long time to accept it. It was never about me not being enough. It was about him not being someone capable of honesty when honesty was inconvenient. That's not a flaw in me. That's a flaw in him. But in the moment, sitting on that garage floor, all I felt was rage. Clean, focused, ice-cold rage. And that rage is exactly what saved me from doing something stupid. Because my first instinct, if I'm honest, was to walk into the house and throw every single thing he owned into the front yard, to call him at work and scream until security escorted him out, to text Danielle a photo of our wedding album with the caption, "Hope it was worth it." I didn't do any of that. Instead, I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I went inside, made dinner like nothing happened. And when Ryan got home and asked how my day was, I looked him dead in the eye and said, same old, same old. Because in that moment, I made a decision that changed everything about how this story ends. I decided I wasn't going to react. I was going to plan. The next morning, I called my best friend Mara, who is a divorce and family law attorney. Not my attorney, just a friend, but someone who'd spent 15 years watching people either protect themselves during a divorce or completely fail to. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long moment and then said the sentence that became the blueprint for the next 6 weeks. Do not let him know you know. Everything you do from this point forward has to happen before he realizes the clock is running. That one sentence reframed the entire situation for me. This wasn't about revenge in the movie sense, keying his car, dumping his clothes on the lawn, telling everyone at Thanksgiving. That stuff feels good for about 10 minutes, and then it's over, and you're the one who looks unhinged, and he's the one who gets to play victim. My wife had a breakdown. She's not handling it well. I was not going to hand him that narrative. Real revenge, the kind that actually works, looks boring from the outside. It looks like paperwork. It looks like patience. And that's exactly what makes it devastating. Step 1. Document everything quietly. Before he had any idea I knew, I photographed every message on that second phone, every hotel receipt I could find in old jacket pockets and glove compartment stashes, every credit card statement showing charges I hadn't previously questioned, jewelry he never gave me, a hotel in Charlotte that matched a work trip but was booked on a personal card, a florist charge on a random Tuesday in March. I built a timeline. 11 months documented start to finish, saved in 3 separate places. A cloud folder Mara held, a flash drive in my desk at the office, and printed copies in a safe deposit box under my maiden name.
Why does documentation matter so much? Because in most states, infidelity itself might not legally win you a divorce settlement outright, but financial misconduct absolutely does. And Ryan, in his arrogance, hadn't just cheated. He'd spent marital money doing it. Hotels, gifts, a Charlotte conference that was 80% vacation with Danielle. Every one of those charges came out of accounts I had equal legal claim to. He'd handed me a paper trail of financial betrayal without even realizing it. Step 2. Protect the money before he can hide it. This is the part where being an accountant became the most useful skill I have ever had. I know how people hide money during a divorce because I've seen clients try to do it, moving funds to a sibling's account, loaning cash to a friend who quietly gives it back later, opening a new account he thinks I don't know about. So before I filed anything, before a single lawyer's letter went out, I moved. I didn't touch a cent that wasn't legally mine to touch, but I did open a separate account in my name only and began redirecting my own income there instead of our joint account. Completely legal, completely mine to do. I pulled documentation on every joint asset, the house, both retirement accounts, the business I ran, which, critically, I had built almost entirely before we got married and kept meticulously separate the entire time, on Mara's advice years earlier when we first got married. That decision, made for boring, practical reasons back when I trusted him completely, ended up protecting nearly everything I'd built. Step 3. The 401k discovery. Here's a twist I did not see coming, and honestly, this is the part that made even Mara sit up straight. While pulling financial documents, I discovered Ryan had taken out a loan against his 401k 8 months earlier, $11,000 that I never signed off on, never knew about, and that legally, in our state, required spousal consent for a loan of that size against a retirement account with survivor benefit implications. He'd forged my signature. I sat with that for a full day before I told Mara because I wanted to be sure I wasn't misreading it. But no, there it was. My name, spelled correctly, but in handwriting that wasn't mine, on a form dated the same week Danielle's Charlotte trip happened. He'd used marital retirement funds without my knowledge or consent to fund a trip with his mistress. That's not just infidelity anymore. That's fraud. Step 4. Building the timeline for maximum leverage. Mara explained something I hadn't understood before. In a divorce, leverage isn't about being right, it's about what the other side is afraid will come out. Ryan worked for a company with a strict internal conduct policy. I knew this because I'd helped him prep for HR trainings over the years, half paying attention while doing my own paperwork at the kitchen table. Employees having relationships with people they directly supervised, especially subordinates on the same client accounts, was a fireable offense. Danielle wasn't just his mistress. She was, on paper, someone he had authority over on the Peterson account. That wasn't just a moral failure. That was a violation his employer took seriously enough to have an entire signed policy about. I didn't plan to report it out of spite. I planned to hold it, quietly, as leverage, for exactly the right moment. Step 5. Allies. I brought in 2 people I trusted completely. My sister Kayla, who was unshakable under pressure and became my sounding board for every decision, and Mara, who by this point had officially agreed to represent me once I was ready to file. I told no one else, not my parents, not our mutual friends, not a single person who might even accidentally tip Ryan off before I was ready. There was one near miss that still makes my stomach drop thinking about it. About 2 weeks into the planning, Ryan came home early one afternoon while I had financial documents spread across the kitchen table. Bank statements, the forged 401k form, photos of messages printed out for Mara's files. I heard his key in the door with maybe 40 seconds of warning. I swept everything into a grocery bag and shoved it under the sink so fast I scraped my knuckle on the cabinet hinge. And when he walked in, I was standing at the counter chopping vegetables like nothing in the world was wrong. "You okay?" he asked. "You look flushed." "Just cooking," I said. "It's hot in here." He believed me, because he still thought he was the only one in this marriage capable of lying convincingly. Step 6. The final piece. Timing. Mara and I settled on a plan. I would file for divorce on a Friday, timed so the paperwork would be served to him at his office on a Monday, not out of cruelty, but because Mara knew once he was served, he'd almost no time to move or hide assets before the court's automatic financial restraining provisions kicked in, freezing joint accounts and preventing exactly the kind of asset hiding I already knew he was capable of. I would simultaneously, on that same Monday, send a factual, unemotional, documented letter to his company's HR department, not accusing him of the affair itself, since that wasn't technically my business to report, but disclosing the unauthorized 401k loan forged with my signature, which was a matter of financial fraud that directly implicated company-administered retirement accounts, and separately, factually noting the supervisory relationship with a subordinate on a shared active client account, which was a documented violation of the employee conduct policy he had signed years earlier. I let facts speak. I didn't editorialize. I didn't need to. Everything was in place. The lawyer, the documentation, the frozen accounts about to be frozen, the letter sitting drafted and ready in Mara's office. 6 weeks of quiet, methodical work, and Ryan had no idea. He was still coming home every night, kissing me on the cheek, asking what was for dinner, texting Danielle from the driveway thinking he was invisible. But what happened next, I never saw coming, because 2 days before I was set to file, everything accelerated in a way I could never have planned for. It was a Wednesday night. I remember because I'd made his favorite dinner, chicken parmesan, partly to keep up appearances, partly, I'll admit, because some petty part of me wanted him to enjoy one last good meal as a married man who thought he was getting away with something. He got a phone call during dinner and stepped outside to take it. I watched him through the kitchen window, and something about his body language shifted. Shoulders tight, one hand raking through his hair over and over. When he came back inside, his face had gone pale. "I have to go," he said. "Family emergency. Danielle's family emergency, I mean. A coworker. Sorry, I misspoke." He misspoke, all right, because Danielle had gone into early labor, 29 weeks, and in his panic, standing in our kitchen, he called her by name to my face for the first time in 11 months of lying. I want you to understand what was happening inside me in that moment, because it surprised even me. I wasn't devastated. I'd already grieved this marriage in private, alone, over 6 quiet weeks of paperwork and documentation. What I felt instead was something closer to clarity. This was it. This was the moment the timeline I'd built collapsed into the present tense. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at him and said, "I know." 2 words. His face did something I will remember for the rest of my life. This slow-motion collapse of every lie he'd been telling himself about how well he was managing this. "You know what?" he asked, even though we both already knew he understood exactly what I meant. "I know about Danielle. I know about the baby. I know about Charlotte. I know about the $11,000 you took out of your 401k with my forged signature to pay for it. I've known for 6 weeks." He tried to talk. He always could talk his way through anything. That was half of what made him good at sales, and honestly, half of what made him so convincing as a husband. But this time, nothing came out except fragments. It's not, "I was going to," "You don't understand the whole." "Go," I said. "Your girlfriend is in labor. Go be there for that. We'll talk when you get back." He left, and the second his car pulled out of the driveway, I called Mara. "It's happening tonight," I told her. "Move up the timeline." Here's where the plan I'd spent 6 weeks building finally activated, piece by piece, faster than I'd originally scheduled, but exactly in the order I'd designed. That night, Mara filed the divorce petition electronically, first thing available. Because Ryan wasn't home, because he was at a hospital an hour away with Danielle, the timing meant the automatic asset freeze provisions on our joint accounts went into effect while he had absolutely no ability to react. He couldn't move money he didn't even know was about to become inaccessible. Every dollar he might have tried to shift was locked in place before he even knew there was a reason to move it. The next morning, while Ryan was almost certainly still at the hospital, exhausted, probably holding a premature baby he now had to explain to his entire family, the HR letter went out. Factual, documented, unemotional. A forged signature on a retirement loan document is not an opinion. It's a fact, backed by a form with my handwriting analyzed against decades of documents with my actual signature. A supervisory relationship with a subordinate on an active shared client account is not an opinion either. It's a fact, backed by the company's own org chart and their own signed conduct policy. I later learned, secondhand through a mutual acquaintance, that he was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours, pending an internal investigation into both the conduct violation and, because the retirement loan issue touched federally regulated retirement account rules, a referral to their compliance department. That part wasn't even something I orchestrated. That was simply what happens automatically once a regulated retirement account has a forged authorization on file. I hadn't invented a consequence. I had just stopped protecting him from one that already existed. Yes moment number 1, when Mara called to confirm the asset freeze had processed cleanly, locking down our joint accounts, including the account he'd been quietly funneling to for money out of for months to cover Danielle's expenses before he could touch another cent. I actually pumped my fist in my empty kitchen like I just won something, because I had. Now, I know some of you are wondering about Danielle in all of this, so let me address that directly because it matters. I never once contacted her.
I never sent an angry message, never showed up anywhere, never involved myself in her life or her pregnancy at all. Not because I didn't have feelings about it. Believe me, I had feelings. But because she was never actually my battle. She made her choices, and whatever consequences came from those choices were between her, her own conscience, and eventually Ryan's actual reality once the illusion he'd sold her started collapsing too. And that illusion did collapse. Fast. Because here's something I learned during this whole process that I think is worth sharing. People who cheat rarely tell the person they're cheating with the full truth either. Ryan had told Danielle he was already essentially separated, that our marriage had been over for a long time, that the divorce was just a matter of paperwork he hadn't gotten around to. Mara found this out through the discovery process. Texts Danielle had apparently sent him, confused and increasingly upset, asking why, if we were basically already separated, was there suddenly a formal divorce filing, a company investigation, and a forged signature scandal blowing up his entire professional reputation all at once? She'd built her own plans around a lie. A baby, a relationship, an entire imagined future. All of it standing on a story that turned out to be exactly as fake as the story he told me for 6 years. Yes moment number 2. About 3 weeks after everything went public at his office, a mutual friend told me, unprompted, I want to stress, I never asked, that Ryan's company had completed their investigation and terminated his employment entirely. Not just for the conduct policy violation, but because the compliance referral on the forged retirement document escalated once their legal team got involved, given that forging a spouse's signature on a federally regulated retirement account document isn't just a company HR matter. It's the kind of thing that can trigger actual legal liability. He wasn't charged with anything criminally, as far as I know. That ultimately wasn't a road I chose to go down, mostly because I'd gotten everything I needed through the civil divorce process itself. But the professional consequences alone were enough to end the career he'd spent a decade building. Yes moment number 3, and this is the one that still gets me. During the divorce proceedings, because of the documented financial misconduct, the unauthorized loan, the forged signature, the marital funds spent on an affair, the settlement wasn't split anywhere close to even. Because my business had always been kept legally separate, it was never even part of the conversation. The house, which we'd bought together, was sold, and due to the financial misconduct findings, I was awarded a significantly larger share of the proceeds than a standard even split. The 401k loan itself became his sole responsibility to repay, in full, out of his own share. He walked away from a 6-year marriage with less than a third of what he thought he was entitled to, no job, an open compliance flag that would follow him into future employment background checks in his industry, and a newborn baby with a woman who by that point was reportedly furious to learn how much of what he told her had been a lie too. I didn't celebrate his consequences with cruelty. I want to be honest about that. There was no moment where I gloated to his face, no triumphant confrontation scene like you see in movies. The last real conversation we had was short, almost anticlimactic. He asked, near the very end of the process, "Did you plan all of this?" "No," I told him. "You planned all of this. I just made sure I wasn't the only one who paid for it." The twist I genuinely never saw coming, the one I promised you at the start of this video, it wasn't the pregnancy, and it wasn't even the job loss. It was finding out months later that the family emergency phone call that pulled him away from our dinner table that final night, the one that accelerated my entire timeline, came from Danielle's mother. Because Danielle herself had tried calling him 4 times that evening, and he hadn't answered, because he was home with me, eating chicken parmesan, playing husband, while his girlfriend was alone at home going into premature labor and couldn't reach him. Even in the moment his double life was collapsing, he was still failing everyone in it. It's been a while since all of this happened, and I want to leave you with what I actually took away from it, because I think it matters more than the satisfying parts. For a long time after, I wrestled with the why. Why didn't he just leave if he was unhappy? Why did he choose 11 months of lying over one honest conversation? I've made peace with the fact that I may never fully understand it, and honestly, I've stopped needing to. Some people simply aren't capable of choosing honesty when honesty is hard. That was never a reflection of my worth, it was a reflection of his character. What I'm proudest of isn't the outcome, even though I won't pretend the outcome didn't feel good. What I'm proudest of is that I didn't let rage make my decisions for me. I let clarity make them. I documented instead of destroyed. I planned instead of reacted. And in the end, the truth did more damage to him than any scene I could have made ever would have. If you're going through something like this right now, if you found a receipt, a second phone, a message you weren't supposed to see, I want you to hear this clearly. Don't confront in the heat of the moment. Get quiet. Get documentation. Get a lawyer before you get an audience. The version of you that reacts loses leverage. The version of you that plans wins the whole thing. I rebuilt my business. I kept my house until I chose to sell it on my own terms, and I am, for the first time in years, completely and fully in control of my own life. That's the real ending, not his consequences, my freedom. So tell me, I want to know, if you were sitting where I was, holding that pregnancy test that wasn't yours, what would you have done? Would you have confronted him on the spot, or would you have played the long game like I did? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story kept you here till the very end, hit subscribe because there's another one coming next week that might be even wilder than this one. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and never, ever underestimate the person you think you've fooled.